Shalom to all you subscribers out there. And this video teaching is actually dedicated to all of you who have or will see my more recent video teachings and wonder, Russell, whatever happened to that nice long, old school, Hebraic looking beard? Or you might be wondering, it's about time you trim down that shaggy looking beard and look a little bit more civilized or sophisticated. Regardless of what you think, I do owe an explanation. And this video teaching is dedicated to that because, to put it into a nutshell, over this past month of June 2016, again, I've had to defend myself in a superior court against some serious, and I say false, accusations. False. As the Lord Adonai lives, I tell you this, that they are false accusations. Now, my accuser on the human level probably thinks they're serving the Creator, and so I don't hold it against them. This is more of a spiritual warfare, of course. And I have a young daughter that was temporarily taken out of my custody for at least 22 days, and that becomes a little bit serious. I had to wait till the next hearing and to defend myself. And over the last year or two, as my beard was getting longer, it sure seemed as if I was getting more discrimination and unfair discernment. So I decided to make a little change, and I did some wise and abundant counsel, asking those of my peers and friends and brethren. And so, with character defamation increasing and discrimination, which I sincerely believe, try not to be too dogmatic, but looking at the fruits of things and trying to discern, I'm not going to mention any names, of course, to protect the innocent. And we're even commanded in the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant, to even love our enemies. So I have no grudges or hateful, but I just have a little explanation here for you. And finally, of course, thankfully, the restoration of my innocence has been regained for the time being, and hopefully will continue. Got another hearing in August, but a lot of goodness has been happening, as we say in Hebrew, more of the older ancient Hebrew, more so than the modern, is Gam Zula Tova. Everything works out for good. And if He is for us, who can be against us, of course, as we know as well. But, there are powerful adversaries in this world still, in case you didn't know. But it's always good to be reminded of that, and sometimes we get reminded on a more personal, intimate, difficult level, because there's a lot of those who simply hate the truth. Well, as it is written in 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4 through 6, it says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal," they're not physical, "but mighty in Him, the Almighty, the Most High, for the pulling down of strongholds, casting down arguments." Yes, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge. Key word there, knowledge. Yeah, knowledge is important. The knowledge of the Most High, bringing every thought into captivity to what? Obedience. Well, there's that word obedience again, of the Messiah. And being ready to punish all disobedience. Punish disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. Now, I hope I didn't push any hot buttons there. Obedience in a good way, out of our heart, and wanting to become more like Him. That's what the commandments teach us to do, to love Him with all our heart, and to love each other. It's all based upon those two, of course. And so we want to be more like Him, don't we? And you're probably familiar with the book of Job. And we have to be careful in judging others just because they're going through trials or difficulties. Remember Job's 3 friends saying, Job, you must be committing some kind of heinous sin or doing something wrong. Otherwise, this stuff wouldn't be happening to you, this bad stuff. And you're probably familiar with that. If you're not, please read that book of Job. It's very important. And there's the young wise man that comes along and gives some wisdom in there. But Job, although he needed some spiritual maturity and growing, and you know, it's easy to get self-righteous when think too highly of ourselves when we're doing good and not doing any really big bad stuff out there. And so we have to stay humble and realize that He is the Almighty and we are really nothing compared to Him. But also in Luke chapter 22 verse 31, and it says here, and the Lord Adonai, or you could say Master as well, Yeshua, aka Jesus, said, Simon, Simon, indeed, Hasatan, we say, Satan has asked for you, that he may sift you like wheat. Whew. Well, we may not know much about sifting wheat, but it's not really easy to get those wheat berries out of the wheat kernels and wheat stalks and all that. Some pounding and hard work going on. So, little analogy there, parable. So sometimes when we are doing a good job, or we are waking others up, or even ourselves, making great strides and becoming more like Him and coming out of darkness and coming into the light, well, you probably know what I mean. There's going to be some attacks against us eventually, some persecution. Don't be surprised by it. And always remember, all things work out for good in the end, for those who love Him, those who are called according to His purpose. Gamzula Tova. Yeah. And also, Romans 8:31, it says here, if the Most High is with us and for us, who can be against us? And nothing will happen against His will. So, try to learn to rejoice and count it all joy. Even when there's trials, there's reasons for it. And we must endure faithfully, not compromise. Trials will either draw us closer to Him, or we'll compromise and drift further away from Him. So let's always remember that. And sometimes we have to make some adjustments in how we do things and how we think, how we react, and make sure that we're presenting ourselves appropriately and avoiding the appearances of evil. And, you know, in this case, you know, more recently with my beard here, I've decided, well, I gotta represent who I represent accurately and not just stick to what I prefer, or maybe some of you out there prefer, but I want to avoid persecution the best I can, not compromise with the actual commandments that are in there. And I've, you know, look to the example of Joseph. Now in Hebrew, the letter J is pronounced like a Y. In Spanish, it's like an H. We'll say Jose, or Joseph would be a Spanish more pronunciation. Yosef. We say Yosef or Joseph. Or we say Yossi instead of Josie. Or Jose is the Spanish pronunciation here. And Joseph, you all know the story. It says here in Bereshit, that's Genesis, chapter 41, verse 12. It says, then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, And they brought him quickly out of the dungeon where he had been for quite a while. And it says, and he shaved, all the way shaved down, changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. You had to, according to that society, he had to look a little bit more sophisticated and presentable. And people are going to judge you by your appearance. I guess we can't seem to get around it, especially in a secular society. But thankfully, so far, I have never been innocently convicted and put into any jail or dungeon. Thankfully, Baruch Hashem, as we say, blessed be his name. But some very serious false accusations, as I said, and character defamation, and for the past 3+ years, ever since I founded and started getting this website off the ground, TorahTruthSeekers.org, and getting these video teachings out in cyberspace, it's been a more challenging 3+ years in regard to what I'm referring to here. And, well, is that an interesting timing? Or coinky-dink? Well, we'll see. But I also keep in mind, regardless, what the Apostle Shaul, or we say Paul, his Roman citizenship name from birth was Paul, and he later transferred to that name. I have a whole video teaching on that. But he also wrote in 1 Corinthians 9, verses 22 and 23. It says, to the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. Now what I propose here is not talking about compromising with actual commandments. And there's no actual commandment that you must have a beard or a long beard. And we can look at the scriptures and see, yeah, he doesn't want us to shave the sides of our heads, but he never mentions never shaving the face. He does say don't disfigure the edges of your beard or try to make it look like some kind of artificial shape or anything. And it depends how you interpret that. You know, some people like the long curly sideburns in Judaism, and so there's different ways to interpret how the beard should be if you're wearing a beard. But here we see, you know, Joseph shaved completely. His brothers didn't even recognize him because he didn't look Hebrew anymore, as long as he was under the Egyptian rule, and even while he was second in command of all Egypt. But, you know, Paul is talking about here being all things to all people in a good way, a non-compromising way, adapting to cultures, especially when there's an obvious reason to. And that's how I interpret this anyway. He says, I have become all things to all men, that I might, by all means, save some. Well, this hopefully will be saving others. And I've got a young daughter, like I mentioned. I want to be a faithful father, the best I can be, and to help raise her and teach her in the ways as she grows, and to not compromise with any of the commandments. And we all need grace, we all need mercy, and hopefully we're not trying to earn salvation by obedience or works alone. But hopefully you know what I mean here, that we need to try to save people, and especially when those we have more influence and help to do so and potential to do so. Verse 23, it says, now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I might be a partaker of it with you. So being all things to all men, for the gospel's sake. Now, when I say gospel, let's remember that it's the same gospel that was preached to Abraham over 3,500 years ago, and also to Israel. As it says in the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah here, it says in Romans. You can go to Romans 10:15. Galatians 3:8 says the gospel was preached to Abraham. Hebrews 4, chapter 2, says that the gospel was preached to Israel. Very clear there. And in fact, well, Romans 10:15 is quoting Isaiah 52:7, where your translation might say good news or good tidings, but with the Septuagint we can see the Old Testament translated into Greek. Same Greek word that is used for gospel is used in Isaiah 52:7, and also in Nahum, Nahum chapter 1 and verse 15. So same gospel, of course. Just like software versions can, and we see computers can be upgraded and improved, we see that through the New Covenant. The Brit Hadashah is prophesied to become a new covenant, a better covenant, and it has a new spirit involved. And that's in 4 places, in 2 times in Jeremiah 31:31 through 33, and also go to Jeremiah 32, I think it's around verse 19. And then I believe it's also in Ezekiel 11 and Ezekiel 36. And this is a wonderful covenant, a new covenant that's prophesied. And so it's a gospel and a covenant that's being upgraded to a level where we need extra help, because we can see that. Without going off too much into a tangent, I do have a teaching video titled "Same Old Gospel" or something to that effect, and also the covenants. There's at least 8 covenants we see that the Creator makes with humanity, and some of them between humanity and the Creator, and just in the Tanakh, the Old Testament of them by itself, including a covenant with Ishmael. So there's a lot of covenants that are in there, not just one old covenant. Anyway, so as long as I have life and breath, as long as I have freedom of speech and some high tech to do so as well, and I'm not being shut down in cyberspace as well. So as long as I can do that and have a lack of inappropriate persecution, and the wheels of justice can keep turning, even if they're turning slowly, and they're turning in the favor of the truth and Him granting favor in the sight of me, as long as I can keep doing this, you'll keep seeing me in cyberspace, and I hope you're subscribed. If not yet already, please do so, because I am hoping to be one of His unstoppables, one of His, as we say, His untouchables, like a spiritual Elliot Ness and his gang, that we're trying to bring more righteousness and justice in their days. I hope to be a more untouchable by the wrong forces out there, let me put it that way, to spread the word, this word, in writing, and which became flesh and spirit as it goes out in all 3 levels there. Turning many to righteousness. As it says in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3, that those who can turn many to righteousness shall shine like the stars in the firmament. That'll shine forever and ever.